Hello and welcome to another quick run through of a modular patch that I've put together. Again, based on a very small kind of micro rack setup with really just two modules, the HermOD Plus for sequencing and the Disting NT for voices and everything else. There's also a little tiny MIDI breakout in the middle, but that's really just providing some utility, not providing any sounds. Let's do a quick rundown of the cables that are connected here. So we've got a USB connection which is displaying the video output and a MIDI cable via the tiny MIDI breakout going into the Disting. There's also a couple of modulation cables here. So this is for CV modulation, which is going into the Disting, and as I say, the output's there. So let's just turn it on, mute the tracks, and then kind of do a bit of a breakdown of the algorithms that are involved on the Disting NT side. So we can see at the top here we've got an attack release envelope. This is being triggered by MIDI channel 5, and we can do things like increase the offset here, so you can hear if we raise it we'll get a kind of constant noise plus a peak, but we really want to use it for a zero based envelope, so turn that back down. Using the NT is a really nice feature there, where if you click the pot it will take you back to the default value, which is very useful. So next one, we've got the Macro Oscillator 2, otherwise known as Platts, which is giving us a nice kind of bass drum sound here. And we can see that, obviously we could change that to a snare if we were mad. We've got our first bit of modulation here. The harmonics are being modulated by a CV input, and this is coming from input 9. So you can see we've got that hooked up to the HermOD. If we switch to the CV output on the HermOD rather than the MIDI, you'll see that on those channels there's some lights flashing on 7 and 8, which are going into 9 and 10 confusingly on the Disting. Next up we've got an LFO. Very simple. We're using this for modulation from within the Disting. So obviously we've got modulation coming out from the HermOD, but here we're using it as just a kind of like almost like a polyrhythm, so based on the input tempo from MIDI but spreading that over 3 bars, and we're sending that to output 3. This is a bit odd. I could have used an internal bus for this, could have used an aux bus, but instead got it going to output 3, just because it's kind of nice and visual. So next up in the algorithms we've got Poly FM, which is a kind of DX7 clone, and here we've got an arpeggiated kind of gated sequence going into it, and you can see I've configured it here with 4 voices. We'll talk about that a bit later. That's basically to save on some CPU because we're not doing a lot of polyphony here. So I've chosen the Gas House voice from one of the built-in banks, which is quite nice. And you can see we're modulating the brightness here. There's not actually that much of a noticeable effect, I think, on this particular voice. I'm going to try a different one, and I think it actually sounds a bit more noticeable. There you go. It sounds almost like a low-pass, high-pass filter going on there, but it's obviously much clearer on this particular voice. I quite like the pluckiness of this Gas House. So next we have more of a sort of traditional synth voice. So we've got an oscillator, a wavetable oscillator, going into a voltage controlled amplifier. So we're using the envelope out of our attack release envelope and into the VCA, and Obviously we've also got a bit of reverb on there. So the mixer only exists to convert the wavetable oscillator output into 2 channels. So let's hear that. And you can see here that the wave shape is changing. So we've chosen one wavetable, and then the wave within that is changing. But you can see here the wave offset value isn't changing, so we're not modulating that directly. And that's because there's actually a specific input. Here we are, the wave input is used to kind of choose which wave you want from the wavetable. And that we're sending in from the modulation from CV. So we can change the right one if we can turn that one off, and now that's no longer being changed. You can see the waveform is static, boringly. Obviously we can change it manually if we want. And of course the obligatory reverb, we can ramp right up to 20 seconds of reverb depth. This would be quite nice to be modulated too as well, actually. And we can do the sort of dry wet mix control, change the model, that kind of thing. Great thing about reverb is that dying out slowly type effect. Okay, and then the drums, for what they are, mostly hats and a couple of other noises, are being controlled by the sample player, or being played by the sample player. They're being controlled by a MIDI channel, so 2 tracks which are sending on the same MIDI channel, and the different notes are being used to play different samples in the sample player. So we've got a kind of conga sound going on here. And the hats, obviously. So the attenuverter we're not using here, but this is something that I've hooked up just so that we can scale down the output. And that's sending to internal output buses, which are hooked up to the headphone output on the Tiny MIDI breakout. If I want to use this kind of without a separate mixer, basically as a standalone unit on the train, for example, which definitely gets some funny looks. Okay, let's have a look at some of the Hermod sequencing that's going on, sequencing and generation of modulation. Now, this is the track which is controlling the FM synth, and as you can see here, there's just one note, which is a bit odd. How is this generating a kind of changing gated rhythm? And the answer is randomness and a Euclidean rhythm generator. So we've got the scale effect that you can see there, just to make sure that everything stays in the same scale. But yeah, we have a randomness effect as well. So the randomness effect is essentially modifying the notes by up to 5 steps. And then we have a Euclidean pattern generator. So for that, we're using the input note. So this could just be generated off of a fixed note. Essentially, you could generate an entire drum pattern using Euclidean effects without any notes in your actual sequence. But instead, we're saying, take the note that comes in and break it up into 8 pieces, and then play 5 of those pieces. And we can go in and adjust various parameters of that Euclidean pattern, and they can be set independently too, so those things can be modulated, and they can also be set on a sort of per pattern basis, so you can have a copy of this track in a different part of the sequence that would behave differently. Okay, so let's look at some more of the modulation that's coming out of the Mod Plus. So I've added in another little sample here, a kind of choir sample, and I've set, that's on the 4th channel here, and I've set the gain up to be modulated by you see the value changing there, it's being set to be modulated by a MIDI CC value. So as well as the CV inputs that you can see coming out of modeling into the disting via cables, we can also do an internal CC control. So if I switch display here, you can see there's lots of stuff coming out on each MIDI channel for things like aftertouch, pitch bend, modulation, and the notes themselves obviously. But here I can go and go to the modulation channel, and then I can increase everything across the board, so we can move this kind of sort of hand-drawn sort of ramp that I did, shift that entire thing up or down, and obviously that will adjust the gain on our samples being played. That obviously could be generated randomly as well, so we can use the generator settings in the Mod Plus to generate a bunch of random values. We've got quite a lot of control over how that can be done as well, so this is obviously a kind of not a random value as such, it's a randomly generated sequence that's then fixed, but we can control things like sort of how frequently that value changes, i.e. how it's quantized, and what the range of values are. So if we want something that changes slightly less frequently, we can reduce the quantization. Thanks very much for watching. I hope that's been useful. Let me know if you've got a Mod Plus and or a disting and you've been doing some fun stuff. I'd be really interested to see what other people have been doing with this. I'm really enjoying the disting and all the stuff you can do sort of inside the box, which feels like modular, but it's just kind of like quite flexible and more software oriented. Kind of interesting. All right, thanks again. See you next time.